In today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on the word grace, more specifically, the Hebrew word for grace, and its Hebraic understanding thereof. Many of us, when hearing the word grace, immediately start thinking about how the church defines it. Unmerited favor. This is the church's standard definition for the word. If you were to look at the English dictionary, the word grace is defined as elegance, beauty of form, mercy, or pardon. English doesn't really capture the deeper meaning of this word. When we read our Bibles today, we read the English translation, which is great. However, we need to understand that it was originally written in Hebrew. The writers of both the Old and New Testament were Hebrew-speaking individuals. Most will say that we can definitely attribute the Old Testament to Hebrew writers, yet some may question whether the New Testament was originally written in Hebrew or Greek. If you look carefully at the texts, I propose that some were written in Hebrew and some in Greek. There are Hebraic idioms that exist in the New Testament that would only be understood if you were a Hebrew speaker. An idiom is a group of words established by usage as having a meaning not deducible from those of the individual words. For example, over the moon, see the light, giving the cold shoulder, and I'm all ears. If you were not an English speaker and unaware of these idioms and heard them for the first time, you would not have a clue as to what they mean. Let's have a look at some of the examples of the idioms used in the New Testament. In Acts 26 verse 14, we see Luke, the author of Acts, use the term kicking against the goads. This may be both a Hebraic and a Greek idiom, meaning that it is fruitless to struggle against God's or against one's destiny. However, there are some very Hebraic idioms that are used in the New Testament. Let's look at one of many. In Luke 13:32, we see Yeshua, the Hebrew name for Jesus, say, "You tell that fox." He was referencing Herod after finding out that Herod wanted to kill him. Now, in Hebraic culture, lions and foxes can be contrasted with each other to represent the difference between great men and inferior men. Herod considered himself a lion or a great man, but Yeshua pointed out that Herod was the opposite of a lion, a fox. The word fox can also have moral connotations. A saying from ancient Hebraic text demonstrates this. It says, "Be a tail to lions rather than a head to foxes." The saying could be paraphrased. It is better to be someone of low rank among those who are morally and spiritually your superiors than someone of high rank among scoundrels. Yeshua was not implying that Herod was sly. Rather, he was commenting on Herod's inability to carry out his threat. This is just one example of how important it is to consider that we need to know the correct context of what was said in the Bible, and more importantly, to understand the original language used at the time of its writing. Another important aspect to take note of is that a lot of the Bible was written in Paleo-Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew is not the Hebrew that is used today. Paleo-Hebrew is a pictographic language. It is also known as Proto-Hebrew and was the script used in the historic kingdoms of Israel and Judah. The earliest known examples of Paleo-Hebrew writing dates to the 10th century BCE. Keep in mind, the commandments given at Mount Sinai were given between the 16th and 13th century BCE. They were most definitely written in Paleo-Hebrew. Reading Paleo-Hebrew is not the same as merely reading a word. Each word written in Paleo-Hebrew script has many different meanings and conjures up many images in one's mind. When Hebrew was first written, each letter represented both a sound and a picture. Even if you don't understand the sounds in the Hebrew language, the pictures behind the Hebrew words would still be clear. For example, there was a 4,000-year-old inscription found in Israel, which had the two Paleo-Hebrew letters Aleph and Lamed on it. This reads as El, which means God. But in Paleo-Hebrew, the letter Aleph is a picture of an ox head, which means strong or first. The letter Lamed is a picture of a shepherd's staff and depicts authority or guiding or teaching. So in an ancient Hebraic mindset, El, or God, means an authority that existed first that teaches and guides us. With that understanding, let's dig into the Hebrew word for grace. The Hebrew word for grace is Chen. Chen is a two-letter parent root. In order to understand the word, let's take a look at two verbal roots that stem from Chen. The first one is Chena. Its Hebrew Strong's is number 2583, and it means to pitch a tent or camp. There's some good biblical examples of this word, and the first we see in Genesis 26 verse 17. So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, where he settled. Exodus 14 verse 20. The cloud settled between the Egyptian and Israelite camps. As darkness fell, the cloud turned to fire, lighting up the night, but the Egyptians and Israelites did not approach each other all night. There is a belief that in ancient times, the Israelites would camp in circles for protection. This brings us to the paleo understanding of Chen. If you break it down, you have a chet and a nun. The chet means wall or separation, and nun can depict life or something that continues. So in other words, Chen means a wall that continues. And this is a good image of how the Israelites camped, in circular formation, a wall that continues forever. The second verbal root that stems from Chen is Chenan, which is Hebrew Strong's 2603. It's Hebraically understood as to be gracious or to have mercy. In order to understand possible meanings of this Hebrew word, we have to go back to the poetry and writings in the Bible to understand in what context the word was used and what other words are associated with that word. I have found a few, and let's go through them. Psalm 6 verse 2. Have mercy, Chenan, on me, Lord, for I am faint. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. Psalm 30 verse 10. Hear, Lord, and be merciful, Chenan, to me. Lord, be my help. Psalm 41 verse 10. But may you have mercy, Chenan, on me, Lord. Lord, raise me up that I may repay them. Psalm 57 verse 1. Have Chenan on me, my God, have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. Psalm 86 verse 16. Turn to me and have Chenan on me, mercy on me. Show your strength in behalf of your servant. Save me, because I serve you just as my mother did. In these instances, we are speaking about healing, helping, raising, a refuge, and strength. There are more, but this gives us a good picture. It's really speaking about protection and provision. And where do we go to get protection? Well, back to the camp. Back to Chen. Back to Chena. So if you look at all the depictions of these two verbal roots and their understandings and their context, in totality, in a Hebraic person's mind, grace is a camp of protection, a graceful, precious, and beautiful place where you find healing, mercy, and can take refuge. This is a far different meaning from the standard English definition of unmerited favor. Keep in mind, one can leave the camp of protection and not receive any of the benefits of being within the camp. This is exactly why James himself said faith without actions is useless in James 2. We need to make sure that we stay in that camp and not willfully leave. The only way we can do that is by keeping to His word and to continue building that relationship with Him. In the story of the prodigal son, the son curses his father and practically wishes him dead in order to receive his inheritance. The father gives the son his allocated inheritance and the boy leaves. The boy left the protection of the father's house and went into the pagan city nearby, squandered his money, and was left destitute, without protection, and vulnerable. His heart had to change in order for him to realize that he needed to go back to the father's house. It was that change of heart, from the stony, stubborn heart to a heart of flesh that is open and willing, that caused him to walk back to his father's house and receive grace. So too do we need to introspect and remove any stony parts or stubbornness from our hearts and start heading back to the Father's house, to that beautiful place of protection, mercy, and healing. If you enjoyed this teaching, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Thank you, and God bless.